I woke up to the sound of the coffee maker hissing in the kitchen. It was barely 6 in the morning, and the house was already stirring. My hands, stiff from arthritis, fumbled with the tie of my old robe as I shuffled down the hall. The air smelled of fresh coffee and toast, but there was something else, too, a tension that hung like a fog in this house. My house, or at least, it used to be. My name is Grace Mitchell, and I'm 72 years old. For nearly 4 decades, this little home in Charlotte, North Carolina, was my sanctuary. Thomas, my late husband, and I bought it back in the early 80s. It was a cozy place in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood, perfect for raising our daughter, Sarah. We'd painted the walls, planted roses in the garden, and filled the rooms with laughter and love. But Thomas passed away 10 years ago, and everything changed. For years back, I signed the house over to Sarah, thinking it would make things easier for her and her family. No messy inheritance battles, I told myself. I just wanted to help. How naive I was. Now, I'm more like a guest here, or maybe not even that, a housekeeper, perhaps, someone to cook, clean, and keep things running while Sarah and her husband, Andrew, go about their busy lives. Sarah's 45, a whirlwind of energy, always rushing off to manage some big event for her. Joe, Andrew, 47, works at a bank downtown. He's all about appearances, polished suits, a gleaming smile, the perfect family image. And then there are my grandchildren, Emma and Liam, 10 and 12. They're the light of my life, but even they seem to sense the way things are in this house. This morning, as I stepped into the kitchen, Andrew was already there, scrolling through his phone, his tie perfectly knotted. "Grace, the kids need to be up by 6:30, he said without looking up. "Emma's got violin practice, and Liam's got soccer. Don't let them dawdle." I nodded, stirring the oatmeal on the stove. "Of course, Andrew." My voice was quiet, the way it always is these days. "I don't argue. What's the point?" Sarah rushed in, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "Mom, did you pick up the almond milk I asked for?" she asked, grabbing her coffee mug. "Did," I said, pointing to the fridge. "It's in there, the organic one you wanted." She opened the fridge, frowned, and pulled out the carton. "This isn't the brand I asked for, Mom. I needed the unsweetened one. This has vanilla." My heart sank. I'd triple-checked the list, but somehow, I'd still gotten it wrong. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I can go back to the store today." "No, it's fine." She cut me off, her voice sharp but tired. "I'll deal with it. Just make sure the kids are ready, okay?" I nodded again, feeling that familiar weight settle in my chest. It's always like this. Small mistakes, little corrections, and a quiet dismissal. I'm here, but I'm not really here. Not to them. I climbed the stairs to wake Emma and Liam, gripping the banister for support. These stairs used to be nothing to me. I'd race up them, chasing a giggling Sarah when she was a little girl, her pigtails bouncing. Now, each step feels like a negotiation with my aching joints. Liam's room was a mess, soccer cleats in one corner, school books scattered on the desk. He was sprawled across his bed, one leg hanging off the side. "Liam, sweetheart," I said, softly, shaking his shoulder. "Time to get up." "5 more minutes, Grandma," he mumbled, pulling the blanket over his head. "Your dad's already downstairs," I said. "You know he doesn't like it when you're late." That got him moving. The kids know Andrew's rules. He doesn't yell often, but his disapproval is like a cold wind, sharp and cutting. Liam groaned but sat up, rubbing his eyes. Emma's room, on the other hand, was pristine. Her books were neatly lined up, her violin case propped against the wall. She's like her mother, that way, organized, precise. "Good morning, Grandma," she said, already half awake when I opened her door. "Is breakfast ready?" "Just about, darling," I smiled. "Wash up and come downstairs." Back in the kitchen, Andrew was still on his phone, and Sarah was packing her bag for work. I set out bowls of oatmeal and sliced fruit, trying to stay out of their way. The kitchen used to be my domain, with my old checkered curtains and the wooden table Thomas and I picked out at a flea market. Now it's all sleek stainless steel and marble countertops, Sarah and Andrew's vision of modern perfection. My curtains are long gone, packed away in a box in the attic, along with Thomas's old fishing gear and the photo albums I used to flip through with Sarah. "Grace, there's yogurt in the fridge for you," Sarah said, not looking up from her phone. "It's the low-fat kind. Good for your health." I didn't want yogurt, especially not the tasteless kind they bought for me. but I murmured a thank you and took a seat at the edge of the table. I've learned to make myself small in this house, to take up as little space as possible. Breakfast was quiet, broken only by Andrew's occasional comments about his schedule or Sarah's reminders about the kids' activities. "Liam, don't forget your shin guards," she said. "And Grace, can you pick Emma up from violin at 3? I've got a meeting." "Of course," I said. Even though I had a doctor's appointment at 2:30, I'd have to reschedule. Again, no one thanked me. No one asked how I was doing, or if I was tired. It's just expected that I'll handle it all: the cooking, the cleaning, the shoring. My pension goes into the household expenses, and I keep my own spending too, a minimum. I don't mind helping. I love my family. But sometimes I wonder if they even see me. As I cleared the breakfast dishes, I caught my reflection in the small mirror above the sink. My hair, once a vibrant chestnut, is now gray and thinning. I used to dye it, but it felt like too much effort. After Thomas passed, my eyes, still a soft hazel, are framed by wrinkles that seem to deepen every year. "You're still my beautiful Grace," Thomas used to say, even when I was in my 60s, fretting about laugh lines. I smiled at the memory, but it faded quickly. I'm not sure who I am in this house anymore. Not a wife, not a mother in the way I used to be, just Grandma. The one who's always there, always useful, but never really seen. Later that morning, after the kids left for school and Sarah and Andrew headed to work, I started my routine: dishes, laundry, sweeping the floors. I used to be the heart of this home, hosting Sunday dinners, decorating for Christmas with Sarah's handmade ornaments. Now, I'm the one who keeps it running, but it doesn't feel like mine. Not anymore. Paused by the living room window, looking out at the neighborhood. Charlotte has changed so much since Thomas and I moved here. The corner store where we used to buy fresh peaches is now a trendy coffee shop. The park where Sarah learned to ride her bike is surrounded by new condos. Everything moves forward, but I feel stuck, like a relic from another time. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, a grocery list, 20 items, including some fancy herbal tea that's only sold at a specialty store across town. I sighed, grabbed my coat, and headed for the bus stop. My old car gave out years ago, and I haven't replaced it. "No need," Andrew said. "I'm always home anyway." As I sat on the bus, watching the familiar streets roll by, I thought about Thomas. He'd always believed in me, in us. "We built a good life, Grace," he'd say, squeezing my hand, "and we had but enough. That life feels like a dream, and I'm just waking up to a reality where I don't belong." I don't know when it started, this feeling of being invisible. Maybe it was when I gave the house to Sarah, thinking it would keep us close. Maybe it was when Andrew started treating my suggestions like they were silly, outdated. Or maybe it was when I stopped fighting to be heard. All I know is that somewhere along the way, I became a shadow in my own home. And I'm not sure how much longer I can stand it. The days leading up to Liam's 13th birthday were like a storm brewing in the house. You could feel it in the air, the way Sarah's voice got sharper, the way Andrew's phone was glued to his hand, barking orders about some grand event. I tried to stay out of the way, keeping my head down, focusing on the usual tasks: folding laundry, scrubbing pots, making sure Emma and Liam had their lunches packed. But the excitement, or maybe the tension, of the upcoming celebration seeped into every corner of our home. My home, once upon a time. Liam was turning 13, a big milestone, and Sarah and Andrew were determined to make it unforgettable. Not for Liam, mind you, though they'd never admit that. It was for their friends, their colleagues, the people who'd see the photos on social media and nod approvingly at their perfect family. They'd rented out a banquet hall at the upscale Charlotte Event Center, complete with a catering service and a professional decorator. It wasn't just a birthday party, it was a production. I remember when Sarah turned 13, Thomas and I threw her a little party in our backyard. We strung up fairy lights, set out a picnic table with a checkered cloth, and I spent all morning baking her favorite lemon cake. Sarah and her friends made little paper craft stars and flowers they glued onto cards for each other. It was simple, messy, and full of laughter. I can still see her face, glowing as she blew out the candles. Thomas's arm around my waist, whispering, "We did good, Grace." That was a lifetime ago. Now, as I stood in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, I overheard Sarah and Andrew at the dining table, laptops open, papers scattered. "The planner says we can have a custom cake from that bakery on Magnolia Street," Sarah said, her voice bright with excitement. They do these incredible sculpted designs. Liam will love it. It's not about Liam loving it, Andrew replied. His tone clipped. It's about the impression it makes. The partners at the bank will be there. We need to show we've got everything together. I paused, my knife hovering over a carrot. I wanted to say something, to suggest that maybe Liam would prefer something simpler, something that felt like home. Maybe we could bake a cake together, like I used to with Sarah. But before I could open my mouth, Andrew glanced up and saw me standing there. Grace, you don't need to hover, he said, not unkindly but with that edge that made me feel like I was intruding. We've got this under control. I was just thinking, I ventured, wiping my hands on my apron. Maybe I could make Liam's cake. I have Thomas's old chocolate cake recipe. It's his favorite. And Andrew cut me off with a laugh, short and sharp. Grace, no offense, but a homemade cake, for a party like this, it's got to be professional. We're not throwing some backyard barbecue. My cheeks burned, and I looked down at the cutting board. Of course, I murmured. I just thought Liam might like it. Sarah glanced at me, her expression softening for a moment. Mom, it's sweet of you to offer, but Andrew's right. We've hired a bakery. They'll handle it. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat, and went back to chopping. Their conversation moved on table settings, lighting, a DJ for the kids. I felt like a ghost, standing in my own kitchen, listening to plans I had no part in. It wasn't just the cake. It was everything. Every time I tried to contribute, to be part of this family, I was gently or not so gently pushed aside. The next few days were a blur of preparations. Sarah was on the phone constantly with the event planner, a young woman named Vanessa who spoke in rapid bursts about color schemes and photo backdrops. Andrew was obsessed with the guest list, making sure every important colleague was invited. I kept busy with my usual tasks, but I couldn't help overhearing their conversations, catching snippets that made my heart ache. We need to make sure the photos are perfect, Andrew said one evening, as I set the table for dinner. The partners are big on family values. It's good for my image at the bank. Maybe we could include some old family photos, I suggested, thinking of the albums in my room, pictures of Sarah as a little girl, Thomas teaching her to ride a bike, the three of us at the lake, for the slideshow. Maybe something personal. Andrew didn't even look up from his laptop. No, Grace, we're going for a modern vibe. Sleek, professional, not nostalgic. Sarah didn't say anything, but I saw her hesitate, like she wanted to disagree but didn't. She just nodded and moved on, talking about floral arrangements. I turned away, pretending to adjust the plates, so they wouldn't see the hurt in my eyes. Nostalgic, that's what I was to them. An old, outdated thing. Like a piece of furniture they didn't know what to do with. I tried again, a few days later. When I saw Sarah flipping through sample invitations on her tablet, they were elegant, with gold foil and crisp calligraphy. Those are beautiful, I said, sitting beside her. You know, when you were little, I used to make your birthday invitations by hand. We'd cut out shapes and write little messages for your friends. Sarah smiled, but it was tight, polite. That's sweet, Mom, but we need something more polished. Vanessa's handling the invitations. She's got a graphic designer. Of course, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I just thought, maybe something personal for the family. Grace, Andrew said, walking into the room with his coffee mug. This isn't a kindergarten craft party. We've got 50 guest clients, colleagues, the kids, friends. It's got to look high-end. I nodded, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. I understand, but I didn't, not really. I didn't understand why everything had to be so perfect, so polished, that there was no room for me, for the things that made us a family. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't sleep. My room, once the guest room, now my only corner of the house, was small but comforting. I kept Thomas's old watch on the nightstand, its ticking a quiet reminder of the life we'd built. I pulled out a photo album, one I hadn't opened in months. There we were, Thomas, Sarah, and me, laughing at a 4th of July picnic. Sarah was 6, her face smeared with watermelon juice. Thomas had his arm around me, his smile wide and warm. We were happy then. We were a family. I closed the album and pressed it to my chest, tears prickling my eyes. Where had that family gone? When did I become someone to be tolerated, someone whose ideas were laughed off as quaint or old-fashioned? I didn't have answers, but the ache in my chest grew heavier with each passing day. The morning of the final planning meeting, I overheard Sarah and Andrew in the living room, talking with Vanessa, the event planner. She was a stylish woman in her 30s, with a clipboard and a confident smile. "We'll have a photo booth with a custom backdrop," she was saying, spreading out fabric swatches. "And for the family photos, I suggest a sleek, neutral palette grays and blues. It's timeless but modern." "I love that," Sarah said, her eyes lighting up. "We want the photos to look perfect for the slideshow and the invitations. Maybe we could include Grace in some of the photos," I heard myself say, stepping into the room. "I could wear something to match the palette." Vanessa looked at me, her smile polite but uncertain. Andrew didn't miss a beat. "Grace, we're focusing on the immediate family for the main shots," he said, his tone final. "You know, Sarah, me, the kids. We'll do some extended family photos later, maybe." Sarah glanced at me, her expression unreadable. "Yeah, Mom, we'll make sure you're in some of the pictures." But I heard the subtext, some of the pictures. The ones that wouldn't be shown to the guests. The ones that wouldn't be plastered on social media or printed on glossy invitations. I was being sidelined, again, in my own family. I forced a smile. "That sounds fine," I said, and excused myself to the kitchen. As I filled the kettle, my hands trembled. I wasn't just being left out of the photos, I was being erased from their perfect little world. And the worst part, Sarah, my own daughter, was letting it happen. That evening, after dinner, I overheard Andrew and Sarah talking in hushed tones in the living room. I was in the kitchen, washing dishes, but their voices carried. "She keeps trying to butt in with these outdated ideas," Andrew said, his voice low but sharp. "Handmade cakes, paper crafts, it's embarrassing, Sarah. This isn't the 1980s. She means well," Sarah replied, but there was no conviction in her voice. "She's just from a different time." "A different time," Andrew echoed, his tone dripping with disdain. "That's the problem. She doesn't fit with the image we're trying to project. Not at an event like this." I froze, the sponge slipping from my hand into the soapy water. I wanted to walk in there, to tell them I was still here, still a part of this family, but my feet wouldn't move. My heart felt like it was being squeezed. Each word another twist of the knife. I was their mother, their grandmother, but to them, I was just old, a relic, a burden. I finished the dishes in silence, my mind racing. I thought of Thomas, how he'd always made me feel valued, needed. "You're the heart of this family, Grace," he'd say, kissing my forehead. But now, that heart felt like it was breaking, piece by piece. As I climbed the stairs to my room, I passed Liam's door. He was sitting on his bed, headphones on, playing a video game. "Good night, sweetheart," I said softly. He looked up, pulling off one headphone. "Night, Grandma. Are you okay? You look sad." I forced a smile. "I'm fine, Liam, just tired. Big day tomorrow with all the party planning." He nodded, but his eyes lingered on me, like he could see through the lie. I closed his door and went to my room, shutting the world out. In the quiet, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at a framed photo of Thomas and me on our 25th anniversary. We were dancing in the backyard, Sarah snapping the picture with her little Polaroid camera. I could still hear her giggling, calling us gross for being so mushy. I touched the glass over Thomas's face, my throat tight. "What would you do, love?" I whispered. "How do I keep going in a house where I'm not wanted?" The photo didn't answer, but the silence felt heavier than ever. I lay down, pulling the blanket over me, and let the tears come. Tomorrow was another day, another chance to try to belong. But deep down, I wasn't sure I could keep pretending anymore. The morning of Liam's birthday photo shoot dawned bright and warm, the kind of September day in Charlotte that feels like a gift. I woke up early, my stomach knotted with a mix of hope and nerves. Today was important not just for Liam, but for me. I wanted to be part of this moment, to feel like I belonged in this family again, even if just for a few photographs. I stood in front of the mirror in my small bedroom, smoothing the new dress Sarah had picked out for me. It was a soft navy blue, simple but elegant, with a high neckline and long sleeves that hid the age spots on my arms. I'd washed my hair the night before, using a conditioning mask I hadn't touched in years. For the first time in a long while, I put on a little makeup, some blush, a touch of lipstick, nothing fancy. I looked at my reflection, my hazel eyes still bright despite the wrinkles framing them. "You can do this, Grace," I whispered to myself, echoing the words Thomas used to say when I doubted myself. I added a delicate silver necklace, a gift from Thomas for our 30th anniversary, and slipped on low heels. They weren't the most comfortable, but they matched the dress. I wanted to look my best, not just for the photos, but for myself. Maybe, just maybe, if I looked the part, they'd see me as more than the old woman who cooked their meals and folded their laundry. Downstairs, the house was buzzing. Sarah was adjusting Emma's dress, a pale blue number with a satin sash. Liam was tugging at the collar of his crisp white shirt, looking uncomfortable but sharp. Andrew was in a tailored gray suit, his hair perfectly combed, checking his watch. "We need to leave in 10 minutes, he said, his voice all business. "The photographer's meeting us at the botanical garden at 10. Sarah glanced at me as I entered the kitchen. "Mom, you look nice," she said, her tone surprised, like she hadn't expected me to make an effort. "Thank you, darling," I smiled, pouring myself a cup of coffee. "I'm ready for the photos." Emma ran over, her eyes wide. "Grandma, you look so pretty. Like a movie star." I laughed, the warmth of her words easing the tightness in my chest. "Oh, Emma, you're too sweet." Andrew looked up from his phone, his gaze sweeping over me. "The dress looks good, Grace," he said, but there was something in his eyes, something that felt like scrutiny rather than approval. "Just make sure you're there by 11:30. We're doing the main family shots first." My heart sank a little, but I nodded. "I'll be there. Don't worry." Breakfast was a rushed affair, with Sarah giving the kids last-minute instructions about smiling for the camera and Andrew checking emails. I sipped my coffee quietly, watching them. They looked like a picture-perfect family, Sarah in a sleek, cream dress, Andrew in his suit, the kids polished and poised. I felt like an outsider, even in my new dress, even with Emma's sweet words still ringing in my ears. They left for the botanical garden in Andrew's SUV, and I was to follow by bus. "But it's a short ride, Grace," Sarah had said, handing me a transit card. "Just get off at the garden stop. It's a 5-minute walk." I sat by the window as the bus rolled through Charlotte, the familiar streets blurring past. The botanical garden was one of the prettiest spots in the city, with winding paths, blooming roses, and a little pond lined with willows. Thomas and I used to walk there on weekends, holding hands, talking about nothing and everything. I wondered what he'd think of me now, trying so hard to fit into a family that didn't seem to want me. I arrived at the garden a little early, just before 11:30, my heart pounding as I walked toward the rose garden where the shoot was happening. From a distance, I saw them, Sarah and Andrew standing close together, his arm around her waist, Emma and Liam in front, all smiling for the photographer. They looked like they belonged on a magazine cover, every detail perfect. The photographer, a young woman named Mia with a bright smile, was adjusting her camera, calling out directions. "Tilt your head a little, Sarah." Liam, big smile. I stood off to the side, not wanting to interrupt. Emma spotted me first. "Grandma," she called, waving excitedly, breaking the pose. Sarah and Andrew turned, and I saw Sarah's smile falter for a moment. Andrew's expression was unreadable. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, stepping closer. "I'm probably early. I can wait until you're ready." "No, you're fine," Mia said, waving me over. "You must be Grandma Grace." "I'm Mia, the photographer. We're just finishing the main shots, but we can start the extended family ones now." Sarah hesitated, glancing at Andrew. "Sure," she said, her voice tight. "Let's do it." Mia directed us to a spot under a trellis covered in climbing roses. "Grace, you stand next to Sarah," she said. "Kids, in front. Andrew, on the other side." I took my place, feeling Andrew's gaze on me, like he was checking to see if I'd ruin the shot. My hands trembled slightly, but I clasped them together, forcing a smile. "Everyone look happy," Mia called, snapping a few photos. "Beautiful. Now, let's try one on the bench over there." We moved to a wooden bench by the pond, the water sparkling in the sunlight. Sarah and Andrew sat in the middle, the kids on either side, and I stood behind them. The sun was in my eyes, and I squinted, trying to keep my smile natural. "Grace, could you step a little to the left?" Mia asked. "The light's hitting you oddly." I shifted, but before Mia could take another shot, Sarah stood up abruptly. "Wait," she said, her voice strained. This isn't working." Mia lowered her camera, looking confused. "What's the issue?" Sarah glanced at Andrew, then at me, her lips pressed into a thin line. "It's just the composition. It's not right." I felt my stomach drop. I knew what she meant, even if she didn't say it outright. It wasn't the composition. It was me. Mia tried to smooth things over. "Let's try a different setup. maybe Grace with the kids first. For the next 15 minutes, I posed with Emma and Liam, trying to focus on their smiles, their chatter about school and games. Emma held my hand, and Liam pointed out a dragonfly skimming the pond. For a moment, I felt like I belonged. But then, as we moved to a new spot by the water, I took a wrong step on the slippery path. My foot slid, and I grabbed a low-hanging willow branch to steady myself. The branch snapped, and I stumbled, splashing water onto the hem of my dress. "Oh no!" Sarah exclaimed, rushing over. "Grace, be careful. Those plants are expensive." "I'm so sorry," I said, my face burning as I tried to shake the water off my dress. "I just lost my balance." Mia was kind. "It's okay, Grace, you're fine. The plant's fine." But Sarah wasn't fine. She stepped closer, her voice low but sharp. "You've got water all over your dress now," she hissed, so only I could hear. "And you broke their garden. This is why we can't." She didn't finish, but she didn't need to. I knew what she meant. I was a problem, a flaw in their perfect picture. I stood there, my hands shaking, the wet fabric clinging to my legs. Andrew walked over, his jaw tight. "Grace," he said, his voice calm but cold, "maybe you should sit this one out. We need to finish the main shots." "I can keep going," I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts. "It's just a little water." "No," Sarah said, louder now, her patience gone. "It's not just the water. You're not fitting in with the look we're going for." And then Andrew raised his voice, loud enough for Mia and the kids to hear. "I don't want an old wreck in our family photos," he snapped. "This is supposed to be perfect, Grace. Perfect." The words hit me like a slap. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Emma's eyes widened, and Liam looked down at his shoes, his face red. Mia turned away, pretending to adjust her camera, but I could feel her discomfort. "Andrew," Sarah said, her voice softer now, like she was trying to rein him in. But it was too late. The damage was done. I looked at Sarah, waiting for her to say something, to defend me, to tell her husband he'd gone too far. But she just stood there, her gaze fixed on the ground, her silence louder than Andrew's words. "I understand," I said quietly, my voice barely audible. "I'll go." "Grace, wait." Andrew started, but Sarah touched his arm, stopping him. "It's better this way," she said, her tone final. "We'll finish up and meet you at home." Emma took a step toward me. "Grandma, don't go," she said, her voice small but fierce. "It's okay, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile that felt like it might break me. "I'm just tired. I'll see you at home." I turned and walked away, my heels clicking on the path, the weight of their words pressing down on me. Old wreck. That's what I was to them. Not a mother, not a grandmother, but a problem to be removed from their perfect frame. Tears stung my eyes as I passed, families laughing, couples holding hands, children chasing butterflies. No one noticed. Me, just another old woman with a wet dress and a broken heart. The bus ride home was a blur. I sat by the window, my forehead pressed against the cool glass, watching the world go by. I kept hearing Andrew's voice, sharp and cruel, "Old wrecked," and Sarah's silence, her refusal to stand up for me, hurt even more. My own daughter, the little girl who used to cling to me, who used to say I was her hero, had let her husband humiliate me. By the time I reached the house, my tears had dried, but the ache in my chest hadn't. I stood in the hallway, catching my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked older than I remembered, her eyes dull, her shoulders slumped. I took off the necklace Thomas had given me, setting it carefully on the table. I didn't feel like his beautiful Grace anymore. I felt like exactly what Andrew had called me, a wreck. I sank into a chair in the kitchen, staring at the empty table. The house was silent, but it wouldn't be for long. They'd be back soon, laughing, talking about how perfect the photos turned out, and I'd be here, waiting, like always. But something inside me was shifting, a spark of anger, of resolve. I couldn't keep living like this, invisible, unwanted. I just didn't know what to do about it yet. The walk from the bus stop to the house felt endless. My legs were heavy, my dress still damp from the pond, clinging to me like a reminder of the morning's humiliation. Andrew's words echoed in my head, sharp and relentless. "I don't want an old wreck in our family photos." And Sarah's silence, her refusal to stand up for me, cut even deeper. I'd spent years giving everything to this family, my time, my energy, my home, and in one moment, it all crumbled. I was nothing to them. just an inconvenience. I let myself into the house, the quiet wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. The hallway mirror caught my reflection again, and I barely recognized the woman staring back, tired, defeated. Her eyes red from tears. She hadn't let herself cry on the bus. I kicked off my heels, hung up my coat, and sank into a chair in the kitchen. The clock on the wall ticked softly, marking the minutes until they'd come home, acting as if nothing had happened. I didn't know how I'd face them, how I'd sit through dinner pretending everything was fine. A soft knock at the door startled me. I wiped my eyes, thinking it might be a delivery or a neighbor dropping by. When I opened it, there stood Evelyn, the woman who lived 2 houses down. She was 67, a retired accountant with a warm smile and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through you. We weren't close, but we'd always exchanged pleasantries waving across the street, chatting about the weather or her garden. "Grace," she said, her voice gentle but concerned. "I saw you on the bus earlier. You looked, well, like you could use a friend. I've got coffee brewing at my place. Would you like to come over?" I hesitated. I wasn't used to sharing my troubles, especially not with someone outside the family. But there was something in Evelyn's eyes, kindness, not pity, that made me nod. "I'd like that," I said softly. "Just let me grab my sweater." I left a quick note on the counter at Evelyn's. "Dinner's in the fridge, just reheat." Grayson followed her down the street. Her house was the opposite of ours. Where Sarah and Andrew's home was all sleek lines and cold marble, Evelyn's was warm and cluttered, full of books, knitted blankets, and potted plants. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, and a plate of homemade scones sat on the table. It felt like stepping into a memory of what home used to be. "Sit, sit," Evelyn said, pointing to a cozy armchair by the window. "I made these scones this morning. Blueberry your favorite, if I remember right." I smiled, surprised she'd remembered. "You're too kind, Evelyn." She poured us each a cup of coffee and sat across from me, her hands wrapped around her mug. For a moment, we just sat there, the silence comfortable but heavy with everything I wasn't saying. Finally, she spoke. "Grace, I don't mean to pry, but you looked like you were carrying the weight of the world on that bus. What happened?" I took a sip of coffee, letting its warmth steady me, and then it all came pouring out. The photo shoot, Andrew's cruel words, Sarah's silence, the way I'd felt invisible in my own home for years, my every effort dismissed, my presence tolerated only as long as I was useful. I told her about the house, how I'd given it to Sarah thinking it would keep us close, only to feel like a stranger. By the time I finished, my voice was shaking, and tears were rolling down my cheeks. Evelyn listened without interrupting, her face calm but her eyes full of understanding. When I stopped, she leaned forward, her voice steady. "Grace, I've seen you over the years, carrying groceries in the rain, picking up the kids in all kinds of weather, keeping that house spotless. And not once have I heard Sarah or Andrew thank you, not once." Her words hit me hard, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. I'd always told myself it was normal, that families lean on each other. But Evelyn's words stripped away that excuse. "I thought I was helping," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I thought they needed me." "They need you to keep their lives running smoothly," Evelyn said, her tone firm but kind. "But they don't see you, Grace, not the woman who raised Sarah, who spent 30 years as a nurse saving lives. They see a free housekeeper, not a mother, not a grandmother." I looked down at my hands, the knuckles swollen from arthritis, the skin thin and wrinkled. She was right, and it hurt to hear it. But there was more. Evelyn hesitated, then leaned closer, her voice lowering. "There's something else, Grace. I didn't want to bring it up, but I think you need to know." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" She sighed, setting her mug down. "I still do some freelance accounting for a few old clients. Last week, I was reviewing some records for a colleague at Andrew's bank. His name came up. Grace, he's been hiding something from Sarand, from you. He's sunk a lot of money into a risky real estate deal, some development project that's gone south. He's racked up debts, big ones. I don't know the details, but it's bad enough that it could affect the family's finances, including the savings you set aside for Emma and Liam." I stared at her, my mind racing. The savings account was something I'd set up years ago, a little nest egg for the kids' future college, maybe a first car. It was all I had left to give them, my way of making sure they'd have something solid. The thought of Andrew jeopardizing it made my blood run cold. "How do you know this?" I asked, my voice trembling. I saw the loan documents, Evelyn said. His name was listed as a guarantor. He's been keeping it quiet, probably to protect his perfect image at the bank. But if this deal collapses, and it's looking like it will, it could wipe out everything. I sat back, my head spinning. Andrew, with his polished suits and obsession with appearances, had always seemed so in control. But this was reckless, dangerous, and he'd kept it from Sarah, from me, from the kids. Suddenly, his words at the photo shoot felt like more than just cruelty. They were a mask, hiding his own failures. What do I do? I asked, my voice small. I can't stay in that house, Evelyn. Not after today. But the kids. If Andrew's messing with their future. Evelyn reached across the table, taking my hand. You don't have to stay, Grace. You're not powerless. You're 72, not 92. You've got a pension, your health, your mind. You can start over. And you can protect those kids. I blinked at her. The idea so foreign it almost scared me. Start over. At my age. But then I thought of Emma and Liam. Their bright smiles. Their futures. I thought of Thomas. How he'd always believed I was stronger than I knew. Maybe he was right. I have a small apartment above my garage, Evelyn said, her voice gentle, but firm. It's nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, a little kitchen, a view of the garden. I use it for storage now, but I could clear it out. You could rent it for next to nothing. Just cover utilities. It'd be yours, Grace. A place to be yourself. Again, I looked at her, stunned by the offer. Why would you do this for me? We're not even that close. Evelyn smiled, a little sad. When my husband passed, I felt like you do now, lost, unwanted. A friend offered me a lifeline, a chance to start over. It changed everything. I promised myself I'd pay it forward. If I ever saw someone in the same place, that's you, Grace. Her words settled over me like a warm blanket. For the first time that day, I felt a flicker of hope, small but real. I thought of Andrew's betrayal, not just to me, but to the kids. I thought of Sarah, caught up in his world, too busy to see what was happening. And I thought of myself, of the life I'd let slip away, trying to please a family that didn't value me. I need to think about it, I said finally, my voice steadier than before. It's a big step, of course. Evelyn nodded. Take your time, but no, you don't have to stay where you're not respected. You deserve better, Grace. When I walked back home an hour later, the house was still empty. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the note I'd left. The silence felt different now, not oppressive, but full of possibility. I didn't know what I'd say to Sarah and Andrew when they got back. I didn't know how I'd confront him about the debt, or how I'd protect the kids. But one thing was clear. I couldn't keep living like this, a shadow in my own home. For the first time in years, I felt something stirring inside me. Not just anger, not just hurt, but determination. I was Grace Mitchell, a woman who'd raised a daughter, cared for patients, loved a man with all her heart. I wasn't an old wreck, and I was done letting anyone make me feel like one. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Evelyn's words echoing in my mind. You don't have to stay where you're not respected. For years, I'd told myself I was doing the right thing, staying close to Sarah, helping with Emma and Liam, keeping the family together. But after Andrew's outburst at the photo shoot, after Sarah's silence, I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. I wasn't part of their family, not really. I was a convenience, a shadow who kept the house running while they chased their perfect image. And now, with Evelyn's revelation about Andrew's secret debt, I knew it wasn't just about me anymore. I had to protect my grandchildren, too. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The house was still quiet, the kids at school, Sarah and Andrew at work. I made myself a cup of tea, not the fancy herbal kind Sarah liked, but the plain black tea I'd always loved. And sat at the kitchen table, thinking. I thought about Thomas, how he'd always said I was stronger than I knew. I thought about Emma and Liam, their bright futures at risk because of Andrew's recklessness. And I thought about myself, about the woman I used to be, Grace Mitchell, the nurse who'd calmed frightened patients, the mother who'd raised Sarah with love and patience. I wasn't an old wreck. I was still that woman, somewhere deep inside. By the time Sarah and Andrew got home that evening, I'd made up my mind. I found them in the living room, going over the photos from the shoot. They looked so polished, so perfect, but I could see the strain in Sarah's eyes, the way Andrew's smile didn't quite reach them. We need to talk, I said, standing in the doorway, my voice steady. Sarah looked up, surprised. Mom, Can it wait? We're in the middle of no, I said, cutting her off gently, but firmly. It can't wait. Andrew raised an eyebrow, leaning back in his chair. What's this about, Grace? I took a deep breath, my hands clasped tightly to keep them from shaking. I know about the debt, Andrew. The real estate deal you've been hiding. The one that's putting the kids' savings at risk. The room went still. Sarah's face paled, and Andrew's jaw tightened. What are you talking about? He said, his voice low, defensive. Don't lie to me, I said, my voice stronger now. I know you've been borrowing against the family's finances, the savings I set up for Emma and Liam, my money for their future. You've been reckless, and I won't let you gamble with their lives. Sarah turned to Andrew, her eyes wide. Is this true? Andrew hesitated, his perfect composure cracking. It's under control, he said, but his voice wavered. It's just a temporary setback. I didn't want to worry you. You didn't want to worry me. Sarah's voice rose, sharp with disbelief. You're risking our kids' future, and you didn't tell me. I stepped forward, my heart pounding but my resolve unshaken. I'm not here to fight. I just want you to be honest, Andrew. And I want you to know I'm leaving. I'm moving out, to Evelyn's apartment. I can't stay in a house where I'm not respected, where I'm called an old wreck in front of my grandchildren. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. Andrew looked away, his face a mix of guilt and defiance. Grace, you're overreacting, he said. That was just a heat of a moment thing. You don't need to leave. Yes, I do, I said, my voice calm but firm. I deserve to live with dignity, Andrew. And I won't let you or anyone else take that from me. I turned and walked upstairs, leaving them in stunned silence. For the first time in years, I felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I wasn't running away. I was choosing myself. Moving into Evelyn's apartment was simpler than I expected. It was a small space above her garage, with a cozy bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and windows overlooking her garden. I didn't have much to bring, just my clothes, a few books, and the photo albums that held my memories of Thomas. Evelyn helped me carry the boxers, her presence steady and kind. You're going to love it here, she said, setting a box on the counter. It's your own little haven. That first night, alone in the apartment, I felt a strange mix of fear and freedom. I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the sunset paint the garden in shades of gold. For the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about anyone else's dinner, anyone else's schedule. It was just me, Grace, figuring out what I wanted. The days that followed were a revelation. I joined a book club at the local library, where I found myself laughing and talking about novels with people who valued my opinions. I started volunteering at the community hospital, helping with patient intake, just a few hours a week. It felt good to be a nurse again, to use the skills I'd spent a lifetime honing. The patients smiled at me, thanked me, and I realized how much I'd missed feeling useful, not as a housekeeper, but as a person. Emma and Liam came to visit often, their faces lighting up when they saw my little apartment. It's like a fairy tale house, Grandma, Emma said, running to the window to look at Evelyn's roses. We baked cookies together, read adventure books, and worked on Liam's science homework. Without Sarah and Andrew's constant oversight, our time together felt freer, more genuine. Emma even started talking about her love for drawing, something Sarah thought was impractical. I bought her a sketchbook, and we spent hours doodling together, just like I used to with Sarah. Sarah came by a week after I moved out, her face a mix of guilt and uncertainty. Mom, she said, standing in my tiny living room, I'm sorry about the photo shoot. I should have said something. I didn't know how. I nodded, pouring her a cup of tea. I know, Sarah, but it's not just about that day. It's about years of feeling invisible. I can't live like that anymore. She looked down at her hands, tears in her eyes. I didn't realize how much we relied on you. The kids miss you. I miss you. I'm right here, I said gently. I'll always be here for you and the kids, but I need to be here for myself, too. Our relationship wasn't fixed overnight, but it started to shift. Sarah began to see me as more than just Grandma, the one who handled everything. She even confronted Andrew about the debt, and though he was defensive, he agreed to meet with a financial advisor. I didn't trust him completely, but I made sure the kids' savings were moved to a trust they couldn't touch. It was my way of protecting Emma and Liam, of making sure they'd have the future I'd always wanted for them. Andrew, predictably, kept his distance. He sent a half-hearted apology through Sarah, but I didn't need it. I'd found something more valuable, my own voice, my own life. He could keep his perfect image. I was done trying to fit into it. By the time my 73rd birthday rolled around, I felt like a different woman. Evelyn insisted on throwing a small party in her garden, with tables set under the rose trellis. Emma and Liam came, along with a few friends from the book club and a nurse I'd gotten close to at the hospital. Sarah came alone. Andrew was at a work event, which didn't surprise me. The air was warm, the roses in full bloom, and the laughter around the table filled me with a joy I hadn't felt in years. Emma ran up to me, holding a folded piece of paper. "Happy birthday, Grandma," she said, her eyes bright. She handed me the paper, and I unfolded it to find a drawing, a colorful sketch of me standing in the garden, with Emma and Liam on either side, holding my hands. At the top, in her careful handwriting, she'd written, "To the best grandma ever." Tears welled up in my eyes as I hugged her tight. "It's perfect, sweetheart," I whispered. "The best gift I could ever ask for." Liam leaned in, his voice shy. "Mom says you seem happier now. She says you look younger." I smiled, surprised by Sarah's words. "I think she's right," I said. "I feel younger, too." As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the garden, I looked around at the people who'd come to celebrate me, not out of duty, but because they wanted to. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen, truly valued. I wasn't just a grandmother or a housekeeper. I was Grace Mitchell, a woman with a past full of love and a future full of possibility. By H.C.C. Tritt. Looking back, I realized that life doesn't end at 72, or 80, or any age. It's never too late to choose yourself, to walk away from a place where you're not valued, to build a life that makes you feel alive. I spent years thinking my role was to serve, to sacrifice, to be whatever my family needed. But I learned that you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to fill yourself first with love, with purpose, with dignity. For those of you listening, if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been made to feel like less than you are, know this: you are enough. Your worth isn't tied to what you do for others, but to who you are. And no matter how old you are, you have the strength to start again, to find your own path, to live a life that's yours. I did it. And so, can you?